All right, we are recording. Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Coffee with Ben. My name is Ben Blackman. I am the Director of Development for Ridge, which is a group of innovation consultants based in St. Petersburg, Florida. Before we get started, as always, I want to encourage everybody out there to go to the Ridge YouTube channel to check out some great videos we have. Go to our Facebook page to like and share all of our content. You can also schedule your own virtual coffee session with me. We can talk about how Ridge can help your company innovate more effectively, strategically plan for the future, or create a strong culture for your employees. I'm excited to welcome our guest this morning. Bernie Borges is the Chief Customer Officer for Vengreso, which is a virtual sales training company. Thank you so much for joining me today, Bernie. How are you?
Good, Ben. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Well, looking through your work experience, which is always the first thing I do when we have guests on, it's very clear that you have run the gamut from sales rep roles early in your career. You've been a VP of corporate marketing, you've been in business development, and now you are the Chief Customer Officer at Vengreso. How would you describe your professional journey to this point, and what was it specifically about Vengreso that attracted you to them?
Yeah, so that's a big question, Ben. So, my career does span sales, software sales early in my career. And then I migrated over into marketing. I had a couple of marketing roles for some companies I worked for. And then I had my own marketing agency for 15 years. And then 4 years ago, I took my marketing agency and I brought it together with three co-founders, and we launched a company called Vengreso. So I merged my marketing agency
Okay.
with my three co-founders to co-found Vengreso, and we came to the marketplace with a market leading. I mean, we emerged very quickly as really the leaders in helping sales teams essentially become the modern seller that the modern buyer needs. So we teach sales teams how to engage digitally, prospect more effectively, more in a more engaged way that really gives the modern buyer what they're looking for. So my whole background into my current role of Chief Customer Officer, where I lead the team that actually delivers our training and coaching services, I've got the full spectrum, the full life cycle of a customer's knowledge, right? From prospecting to selling to closing to running marketing teams, full cycle of the entire funnel. So I've got that lens, Ben, where I really understand the entire customer life cycle journey. And because of my sales background, I'm always coaching my team that, we're always selling in a very effective way that is helpful to the customer. We're there to help them help their sales team get better at selling, and we're working with them to implement those programs, but we're also mindful of what the next opportunities are. So that's what I mean by we're always selling. I don't mean that every call we're delivering pitches. It's not what I
Yeah.
mean at all, but we have to have that lens, that mindset of really helping the customer get to the next phase, the next step in their journey with us.
Mhm. So, as Chief Customer Officer, I know that your role includes leading a team of customer success managers, implementation managers. What in your role are your biggest priorities for the near and long term of the company? And then how has your outlook or strategy changed at all in light of the pandemic that we've been dealing with?
Yeah, great question. So really the primary perspective, the primary goal is to exceed the customer's expectations on what they bought. So, we have a sales team. And so, we sold them a training program. And so our team, the team that I lead, is going to deliver on that. So first it starts with a customer success manager. We go through an 8-week preparation program, right? We call it the implementation plan, 8 weeks of preparation before the training actually begins. So we want to make sure that we roll out to them our standard operating procedures in a very easy, painless way, that all the communication is streamlined, it's clear, it's concise. So we just want to make that experience as great as we can possibly make it. And then when we get to the actual training part, where we're training their salespeople, likewise, we want that training experience to be a great experience. And we want the people that are going through the training program to just love it and, come out the other side of it, which is typically our flagship program is a 13-week program, about an hour a week, 1 to 2 hours per week. So on the other side of that training band, we want them to really feel like they've been transformed into what we call the modern seller. So we want to deliver on those outcomes. We want to deliver on the results that were promised in the sales process. And in terms of COVID, first of all, we were founded as a virtual company, so nothing changed for us in COVID. But of course, many of our customers who are mid-size and large companies, they are oftentimes working from home. So just overlooking silly things like children in the background on a Zoom call, whatever it might be, just understanding that, they're now working from home. And even though we're used to it because we were founded as a virtual company, and as we record this year, we're about 30 people, give or take, at 100% virtual. In fact, our people are located in many different parts of the globe, right? So likewise, we have clients that are in similar scenarios. So it's really easy for us to be empathetic because, we started our business that way, and we have no intention of changing that, by the way, Ben. So we have great empathy for our clients. And so not a whole lot of changing that other than just really having that empathy for the client with, again, the kid or the dog in the background, whatever
Yeah.
that might be, whatever, as long as we can get done what we need to get done.
Are there any big advantages to selling over Zoom? I've been in sales for over a decade. I never really did any sales calls via Zoom until recently. I'm curious from your perspective, are there advantages to doing it via Zoom? Do you anticipate that will be the norm for salespeople moving forward, or do you think it'll eventually shift back to more of like an in-person type of sales cycle for a lot of companies?
Yeah, it's a real common question. Well, the first part of your question, I think one advantage to selling over Zoom is that I could be sitting here right now with you in a pair of shorts and flip-flops, and you're not even going to know that. Meaning, no matter how many people are on this call, no matter how important this call is, I mean, I can have shorts and flip-flops on underneath, which really is irrelevant. Um, the advantage is that it is a little bit easier to get more people together, right? In the traditional way of going face to face, meeting people in a conference room, sometimes it's hard to get everyone to physically show up into one conference room at the same time. In fact, in many cases, you'd have people in a conference room, and then there would be a phone system in the middle, and they would dial in 3 or 4 people that were dialed in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I never liked that because you can't even see them. So the biggest advantage is that if they're willing to be on video, and not all are, but many are, you can have that face-to-face contact. Now, that said, there are some skills that need to be learned. And Ben, I can already tell, this is my second Zoom call with you, I can already tell that you've got those skills. And the biggest skill is to make sure you have that eye contact. It's just no different than when you're talking to someone in person, right? You want to have that eye contact. And the difference is there's a little green dot way up here, and you have to look at that green dot, right?
Yeah.
If I look at my notes down here, right, or if I look at my phone or whatever, I'm not looking, I don't have that eye contact going on, with the people that are on the Zoom call. So there is a little bit of skills development. Same with sharing your screen. There's some skills, you have to develop, a cadence and the competency to share your screen, share PowerPoint, share content online, that sort of thing. And also how to work the room. If you've got 4, 5, 7, 10, 12 people, how do you work the room when it's on Zoom? So there are ways to do that, but likewise, it takes some skills development to do that. And so I think that's something that the modern seller needs to develop those skills. And by the way, a little later this year, we're coming out with a Selling with Zoom course at Vengreso. But
Perfect.
a lot of the skills that we teach in our Selling with Video course, which we've been teaching for a while now, some of those skills are also transferable into a Zoom conversation as well. So I think I answered the first part of your question. Did I don't know about the
Yeah,
second.
you answered it great. Just in terms of, well, do you see there being a shift back toward
Yeah.
more of what we came to think of normal? I mean, whatever
Yeah.
that is, conference room, sitting around a speakerphone. Like, do you anticipate that will be the norm again at some point, or do you feel like Zoom sales and Zoom calls in
Yeah.
general are going to be here to stay?
So I'll answer your question, Ben, in 2 ways. One is I'll share some data that I've read recently from McKinsey, and they put out a couple of reports. One, I think it was in February, that said 80% of B2B buyers like it this way and have no interest in going back to face-to-face meetings. That's from the buyer's perspective. Also, they had an update to that where they said 2/3, so 60, call it 67% of B2B buyers prefer to engage digitally, either with their salespeople or through e-commerce versus face-to-face. So from the buyer's perspective, it seems like they like it this way by and large. Now, from the seller's perspective, it really depends on the industry. We do a lot of work with companies that are in professional services. And one of those industries is the insurance marketplace, which is a very broad marketplace.
Mhm.
And they, in particular, they want to get back to face as soon as possible. Another market segment that wants to get back to face is manufacturing, where they want to go out to a facility and meet with people at the facility face to face, but also because they need to review things that are at the facility,
Mhm.
right? So depending on the industry, there are industries where they want to get back to face as soon as possible. And then there's a lot of technology companies, SaaS companies, that they're okay selling this way because they can have salespeople come to work every day, dress however they want, and then just make a lot of calls or Zoom calls. Again, from the waist up, be presentable from the waist down. It could be a pair of shorts and flip flops,
Yeah.
but yet make a lot of Zoom calls throughout the day and reach a lot of people. And those technology companies are probably not going to change the way they're selling.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to keep an eye on it. You mentioned a little bit about the onboarding process for your clients, and you mentioned that you work a lot with professional services. But I'm curious, is there an ideal client for Vengreso in terms of the size of organization or the size of sales teams? Like, what makes an ideal client for you? What kind of problems are they coming to you with?
Sure. Well, fundamentally, the number one challenge that we address, that we help overcome, is prospecting, pipeline building. That's the number one issue that we address for sales leaders. So our ICP, ideal customer profile, is an organization with 20 or more salespeople. Now, I want to mention that we do have an e-commerce offering as well. So any individual anywhere in the world can go to our website and just subscribe to the course individually for 100% on-demand training, right? That's an annual subscription. But the lion's share of our business is really working with companies, the B2B side of our business, which is the lion's share of our business. And that's sales teams of 20 or more. And a client could be 20 salespeople, it could be 100 salespeople. And we've got a few big companies, big clients that have north of 1,000 salespeople. And so on those bigger clients, Ben, we will train their sales teams in groups of 100 or less. So we can train a group up to 100 people at a time, put them through our 13-week program. And we've had as many as 9 groups going at one time. And they just obviously get scheduled at different times because we're doing a combination of live instruction along with the on-demand content. 1 week is on-demand content, 1 week is live instruction and coaching in that same week. So again, to recap, the ideal customer on the B2B side is 20 salespeople or more. In pretty much any industry, we've done a lot in, as I mentioned, professional services and also technology as well.
Mm-hmm. That's great. You mentioned that prospecting is the number one thing that you're typically dealing with, but are there certain areas of opportunity for enterprise sales teams, way that they're structured or bad habits that you have to get out of them? What kind of trends are you noticing across the board that you think can be easily or somewhat easily corrected?
Yeah, another great question. Ben, number one, the thing that salespeople have to start with is their mindset, is to understand where the buyer is right now. And that buyer is probably still at home and dealing, they may or may not have a dedicated home office.
Mm-hmm.
They may or may not have kids running around, and they're on Zoom calls all day long or Microsoft Teams calls, whatever it is, all day long, right? So they need to understand that the mindset of the modern buyer is that they don't want a cold call. Not that they ever wanted cold calls, but they're much less likely to respond to a cold call. They're also less likely to respond to a cold email. So sellers really need to understand that mindset of the buyer. Then they need to have the mindset that they need to engage with value and they need to engage digitally. And for them, most of the time, depending on their industry, that starts with a good LinkedIn profile. You and I have talked about that,
Yep.
and that is having a LinkedIn profile that makes you attractive. I'm using air quotes, attractive to your buyer. And by attractive, what I mean is if your LinkedIn profile reads like a resume, that's not attractive to your buyer. There's nothing in a resume that's attractive to your buyer. So look at your LinkedIn profile if you're a seller and ask yourself, if I was a buyer looking at my own profile, am I communicating as a buyer, am I reading a profile that says who you help and how you help? So your LinkedIn profile, think of it as a website. It needs to answer questions that your prospect has. So mindset, having a good LinkedIn profile that is written through the lens of the buyer, and then having a cadence that engages with prospects using value. We have a methodology that I mentioned to you off air called PVC. Has nothing to do with that other PVC. It stands for personalization, value, and a call to action. We have a whole blog post on it. And the PVC methodology basically says every time you touch a prospect, always personalize it, always add value, and always have a call to action. And by the way, the call to action should not always be, let's have a meeting, let's have a meeting. The call to action could be a question. It could be an invitation to a webinar. It could be an invitation to read a blog post that you're providing or a video that you're providing. Then the last thing that I'll mention is that the other thing that modern sellers really need to be good at, and we talked about this a little bit, is video. They need to be able to record video messages effectively using both verbal and nonverbal cues. Verbal cues is, modulation and, the way that I'm communicating verbally. Nonverbal is my body language, my hand gestures, right? All that needs to come together, and it takes skills development to create those video messages and then send those video messages out using a tool, right? Not just sending a file, an MP4 file as an email attachment. That's not what I mean. I mean, using some kind of a video tool like Vidyard. We use OneMob, Hippo Video is another one, and there's others out there. BombBomb is another one. So Loom is another one. So using a tool where you deliver your video messages out to your prospects and customers, and then preferably using a tool that gives you some tracking so that, Ben, if you're a prospect and I push a video message out to you, I know if you opened it and I know how much you viewed it. If it's a 52-second video and you watch 47 seconds, I'm going to know that. Did you click on something that was below the video that I put on the page? I'm going to know that. So using, not only having the skills to develop, to record the video and send it to you, but then having the tools to be able to measure the impact or the efficacy of that video by knowing how much was watched and which attachments were actually clicked on.
That's great. Well, I know that we both agree that LinkedIn is an incredibly useful prospecting tool, and I'm sure people out there that are watching or listening can go to your blog and find out more tips and tricks on how to utilize it. I know you've been really helpful in talking to me about my own profile. I wanted to switch gears a little bit. I know you're also the host of the Modern Marketing Engine podcast, focuses on marketing strategies and tactics. You've been doing this for almost 7 years now. You're on the forefront of the podcasting wave. What has that experience meant for you, both on a personal and a professional level?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Ben. So yeah, Modern Marketing Engine coming up on episode 300 as we record this. Wow. So depending on who's watching this when, should be into the 300s very shortly here. And yeah, it's been a great journey. I've learned a lot. I think the biggest thing that I've learned, Ben, aside from the fact that podcasting is a lot of work, I've learned that as well, because it takes preparation. The biggest thing that I've learned, I think, is how to conduct a good interview. And you're doing a great job, by the way.
Thank you.
Because I mean that, because that's what I do on my podcast. So normally I'm on your end of this podcast, right? And so we have a strategy with the podcast. The strategy is I showcase marketing leaders at B2B brands. So while there's a million people out there, and I use that metaphorically, that could be great, interesting people to talk to, it's not about boiling the ocean. It's about really building relationships with marketing leaders at B2B brands. That's the strategy. So I'm selective. If you're not a B2B marketing leader, then you're not a fit for my specific podcast. And I showcase them on a Modern Marketing Engine topic, anything from how do you build, the modern marketing team, to analytics, to ABM, to digital marketing. I mean, run the gamut. I've covered just about everything in 300 episodes. It's been a great journey. I've learned a lot. I learned so much from, interviewing CMOs and VPs of marketing at B2B brands, and built relationships from it. Some of those relationships have evolved into, bigger relationships. and it's just been fantastic. And I look forward to continuing to do it. I have no intentions of like sunsetting the podcast, and maybe I'll get to 400 or 500. We'll see. I don't know, Ben,
Yeah, that's
but I'm
great.
excited that I'm knocking on the door of 300.
That's great. We always like to wrap up with what we call the Benny Good Times Fast Five. It's fast. There's 5 quick questions to get to know you a little bit better on a personal level. I have a
Okay.
bonus question for you, though. So there's actually going to be 6. The first question I have is related to the fact that you are a podcast host. You have an excellent speaking voice. I know you've done some voice acting work on the side. I'm curious, in your opinion, who has the greatest voice of all time?
Who has the greatest voice of all time? Well, I would have to say a gentleman who is deceased, but he's well known. Don LaFontaine is probably the most famous voice actor. I don't recall exactly when he passed away, but he's well known for that line that says, oh, now I'm drawing a blank on the line, like once upon a time, or in the
In a
beginning, or
world.
something.
Yeah.
Say it again.
In a world.
In
He's
a world.
the
That's right. That's
he
right.
did the movie trailers. He was
He
kind
was
of famous
famous
for
for
doing.
movie trailers. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
He-
And other than him, well, there are some others out there right now that are well known,
yeah.
but he's probably the most famous.
Okay.
Unfortunately, he's not with us any longer.
Yeah. Excellent choice. And his work lives on, so that's great.
That's right.
All right. So we'll get to the standard 5 questions though. The first is, what is your favorite thing about the Tampa Bay area? I know you're in the greater Tampa Bay area. Curious what you think about it.
I would say the diversity,
Yeah.
just, the opportunity to do so much, from sports teams to outdoors activity, restaurants, theater, the diversity of it.
Great. And if I gave you a free ticket to travel anywhere in the world outside of the Tampa Bay area, where would you go?
Barcelona, Spain. I was there once many years ago, and it was not planned. And so I could only stay like 18 hours. And I always said I wanted to go back.
Yes, an excellent choice. Question 3 is, what is your favorite movie? We just finished with the Oscar season. I'm curious what your favorite movie of all time is.
Yeah, that would have to be, why do I draw a blank on names here? The Mel Gibson movie.
Braveheart?
That's the one. Yeah. I don't
There
know
you
why I drew a
go.
blank on the name Braveheart. Yeah. I've seen it like 3 times, and it's just so inspiring on what William Watman, or whatever the guy's name
Wallace.
is.
Yeah, William Wallace.
Wallace. Yeah. Yeah. Notice I draw blanks on big names here.
That's quite all right.
He's an actual guy that lived, and it's just an amazing story.
Yeah, Academy Award winner.
Yep.
Question 4, if I was to put you on stage for a talent show and you had to perform, what would you do? It's got to be related to the voice, right?
It would have to be, Ben, because I can't sing, I can't dance. I wouldn't mind acting. I've got a little bit of stage acting experience, not a whole lot, but I would have to say, to your point, to really narrate something that would be of interest to the audience, because of the fact that, like you said, I do some voice acting on the side. So yeah.
That'd be great. And then, who is your biggest hero or inspiration, and why?
Someone that really inspires me a lot is Tony Dungy. He's just an amazing human being. He's a man of faith, as I am. He's a family man. He's experienced tragedy in his life, and he's handled it just amazingly. He's great at his profession. Just so much to admire in Tony Dungy. I've never had the opportunity to meet him in person. I would just love that if that ever happens.
Well, hopefully you'll get that chance. Maybe he could be a guest on your podcast. I know he's maybe not the marketing expert you would hope for, but good guest nonetheless. And then finally, I want to ask you once again, where can our viewers and our listeners go to find out all about the great work you're doing at Vengreso, and also find your podcast as well?
Sure. Thank you, Ben. So Vengreso is kind of like a coffee drink, except it's 1 S, not 2 S's. And it is spelled with a V as in victory. So vengreso.com, right? You can learn anything about us there. I'm there as well. And then find me on LinkedIn. Our podcast is there as well. Modern Marketing Engine Podcast is at vengreso.com. And then you can find me on LinkedIn. My last name is spelled Borges, Borges. First name Bernie, spelled like Bernie, and I'm easy to find.
Fantastic. Well, I can't thank you enough for joining me today. It was a pleasure talking with you and learning about all your tips and tricks when it comes to sales prospecting. Hope everybody will go visit vengreso.com and connect with Bernie on LinkedIn, as I have. Once again, I'm Ben Blackman with Ridge. Encourage everybody out there to go to Ridge's new website. That's ridg.com. And we hope to see you next time. Take care out there.